A reading from the Gospel according to Matthew. On Friday, when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they offered him wine to drink, mixed with gall. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. And when they had crucified him, they divided his clothes among themselves by casting lots. Then they sat down there and kept watch over him. From noon on, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. And about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried with a loud voice, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, "This man is calling for Elijah." At once, one of them ran and got a sponge, filled it with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink. But the other said, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him." Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice and breathed his last. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split. The tombs also were opened, and many of the bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. After his resurrection, they came out of the tombs and entered the holy city and appeared to many. Now, when the centurion and those with him who were keeping watch over Jesus saw the earthquake and what took place, they were terrified and said, "Truly, this man was God's Son." After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descending from heaven came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow. For fear of him the guards shook and became like dead men. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid. I know that you were looking for Jesus who was crucified. He's not here, for he has been raised. As he said, come see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he has been raised from the dead. And indeed, he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Have you ever been enticed by a sneak preview? Have you ever caught a glimpse of something that's coming which piqued your curiosity? With the current wacky and unhinged spectacle, also known as the campaign for the presidency, you may have missed the sneak preview delivered by 2 astronomers in January. You remember that a few years ago, Pluto, the 9th planet, was unceremoniously dropped from the list of planets in our solar system. However, a few weeks ago, while the presidential candidates were hurling insults at one another, encouraging prejudice, ramping up outrage at immigrants, 2 scientists at Caltech predicted that there actually is a 9th planet. They set out what other scientists are saying is a very persuasive case for another planet, one that is much larger than Earth. No one's actually seen it because it is way out there. But now that many are searching, who knows, the day may come very soon. Now, it may sound a bit far-fetched that scientists have predicted a planet that no one has seen, but that was the case with Neptune. Scientists forecasted its existence more than 60 years before anyone ever spotted it. They conjectured its presence by observing the unexpected behavior in the planet Uranus. Scientists believe that the reason for the irregular motion they detected in Uranus was because there must be another planet out there and its gravitational pull is making it act in unusual ways. Thus, they concluded that There's another planet out there beyond our observation, and they turned out to be exactly right. That's basically the method used by these Caltech astronomers to decide that they think there's another planet out there. They believe they're giving us a sneak preview of something that will be confirmed one day in the future. Well, today's gospel reading from Matthew includes a sneak preview of what's to come. For 3 years, the followers of Jesus lived an exhilarating experience as they absorbed his wisdom, witnessed his amazing healing power, and were inspired by his courage. For 3 years, Jesus had filled them with joy, confidence, lofty expectations. Then they arrived in Jerusalem, and very swiftly it all unraveled. Jesus had nasty confrontations with the chief priests and scribes. He was betrayed by one of his closest friends. Then he was handed over to the Romans, who executed him as an enemy of the empire. Today's text begins not with the startling news of Easter morning, but with the grisly account of the Friday that preceded it. Matthew says that Roman soldiers tormented Jesus, then led him to Golgotha, where they crucified him. From noon on, darkness covered the land, and at about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" A little later, he cried once more and breathed his last. Only a handful of days earlier, his followers had hailed him as king. They had visions of justice, finally some dreams of freedom, and they had high hopes for a new world order. But in one brutal act, their hopes were annihilated. There's a story about Ernest Hemingway and a group of writers dining at a hotel in New York. It will come as no surprise to you that the writers were not all sitting around sipping tea. As the drinks were poured down, they were sharing their stories with one another. And at one point, Hemingway bragged, "I'll bet I can write a story with only 6 words, a story that has real pathos. I'll bet you $10. Well, the other men quickly grabbed for their wallets. Everybody slapped their $10 bill down on the table. Hemingway pulled out his pen, started writing on a napkin. 6 words. He passed it to the man next to him, who read it, passed it to the next man, and the napkin went around the circle, and as each man read it, he pushed his $10 to Hemingway. What did he write? For sale, baby shoes, never worn. Devastating words. Hopes crushed. The followers of Jesus must have been gripped by something similar when Jesus was crucified. For sale, gold crown, never worn. Their wise and charismatic leader was killed in a very public and a very humiliating way, which robbed them of their purpose and flooded them with fear. There was a good chance now that the authorities would hunt them down, so they huddled behind locked doors, uncertain of their next move. Far too often, our world seems frozen on that grisly Friday, doesn't it? Grim news constantly surfaces. A young soldier returns home, both legs amputated. A doctor must deliver a dreadful pathology report. A couple travels to Brussels to identify their daughter. Matthew's description of Friday paints a bleak picture. However, in the midst of the gloom, he slips in a sneak preview of the surprise that is coming. After reporting that Jesus cried out in a loud voice and took his last breath, Matthew writes, "The earth shook and the rocks were split. The tombs were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. After his resurrection, they came out of the tombs." Now, Matthew's words are a bit confusing because he says the tombs were opened on Friday and people were raised, but then he says after the resurrection of Jesus, they came out of their tombs. Commenting on these verses, a colleague writes, "While other gospel writers are preoccupied with other details, Matthew spills the beans early. Other gospel writers wait until Easter to talk about the resurrection, but Matthew gives us a sneak preview of things to come, not just for Jesus, but for all those who are in him." After providing an advanced glimpse of glory, Matthew returns to the details of Jesus' death. He reports that a wealthy man from Arimathea, a follower of Jesus named Joseph, came to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. When Pilate consented, he took the body, he wrapped it in linen cloth, and then he put it in the tomb he had created for himself, hewn out of rock. Then a great stone was rolled against the entrance to the tomb. The end of a beautiful but tragic life. Or so it appeared. Moving to Sunday morning, Matthew informs us that women went to the tomb just as the day was breaking. They found the stone no longer covering the opening. It had been rolled away, and a messenger from God said, "I know you're looking for Jesus who was crucified. He's not here. He has been raised. Come and see where he lay. Then go and tell his disciples quickly. He has been raised from the dead, and indeed he's going ahead of you to Galilee, and there he will meet you." Precisely what happened during those first days after the crucifixion of Jesus is altogether unclear. But what we do know is this: something extraordinary happened. Something jolted all of the disciples, and it was so powerful that it transformed them from frightened men cowering behind locked doors into courageous believers eager to stake their lives on the resurrection of Jesus. Despairing disciples were suddenly filled with joy and hope. Simply wishing that Jesus was alive could not have had such a profound impact on the disciples. Simply hearing rumors that Jesus had risen could not have made them brave enough to die for their faith, which most of them did. They experienced the risen Jesus, and it changed the course of their lives. It also changed the course of history. Did you catch what the messenger said to the women when they found the tomb empty? In addition to that shocking declaration that Jesus has risen, the messenger said, "He is going ahead of you to Galilee, and you will meet him there." Now, we would have expected him to say, when you die and go to heaven, you'll meet him there. Why is it he says you will meet him in Galilee? Because Galilee was the home of the disciples. It's where they lived. It's where they worked. It's where they raised their families. It's where their friends were. Galilee represents our day-to-day lives. It's the real world where all of us live. Matthew declares that it's here, in the ordinary, that we encounter the risen Christ. He will not only meet us on Easter. He will not only meet us on Christmas and Thanksgiving, but he will meet us on the dark Fridays and the September 11s of our lives. In the resurrection of Jesus, God overcame betrayal, overcame intimidation, overcame fear, overcame death with life. And God urges us and pleads with us and challenges us to do the same, to partner with God in bringing new life to the dark places we encounter, the places of darkness and death we see in our world. It could be the rekindling of confidence in someone racked by doubts. It could be helping someone in prison learn to read. It could be providing a safe haven for a refugee family. It could be helping someone navigate the rough waters of grief. Partner with God to bring new life to dark places. Like the yet unseen ninth planet out there, it might seem far-fetched to believe in life after death. But something happened to those first followers of Jesus to make them swear, even when they were being killed, that there was life beyond the grave. And not only life after death, but life before death. The resurrection of Jesus is a sneak preview of what will be confirmed for us when we die. It's also a call to live a new life now. You may know that before he became president, Woodrow Wilson was the governor of New Jersey. Shortly after receiving news that one of the state senators had died, he received a phone call from another state politician. "Governor," the man said, "I would like to take that senator's place." "It's perfectly agreeable to me," Wilson said, "as long as it's okay with the undertaker." One day we will all take our place with the undertaker. But because of the resurrection, we will not stay there. Easter proclaims that hope has been let loose in the world. Death tries its best to snuff out hope. Death makes a mighty attempt to smother joy. But the God of resurrection wins the day. And that means that in the end, love will conquer hate. Peace will conquer violence. And life will conquer death. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed.